"Water still, no ice," he barked. "Not please, not thank you, just go," like she was some kind of wind-up toy. Rage threatened to choke Alice, but years of practice kept her face smooth. A good waitress is a ghost. See nothing, hear nothing. But tonight was different. He didn't know about the Oakwood Pines bill, the one that meant her father's eviction. He really didn't know she understood Japanese. Big mistake. See, Damien Thorne, the titan across the table, thought he was untouchable, that his callousness had no consequences. He'd get his deal. She'd get her lousy tips. He had no idea how her quiet act of translation, a tiny flicker of rebellion, would soon unravel his entire empire. Kindness is a weapon they never see coming. He was furious. His deal was collapsing, and his Japanese partners were walking. He didn't know the waitress in the shadows wasn't just there to clear plates. She was the one person in the world who held the key, and she was about to use it. The air inside Lenacle wasn't just air. It was a pressurized atmosphere of old money and new ruthless power. It smelled of truffle oil, vintage Bordeaux, and an unspoken, terrifying level of expectation. For Alice Donovan, it was a special kind of hell. At 26, Alice was a ghost. She moved on silent feet, her black and white uniform, a cloak of invisibility. She was trained to be unseen, unheard. Her existence was reduced to a demure nod, a quiet "right away, sir," and the expert balancing of scalding hot plates. Every nerve in her feet screamed. She'd been on a double shift for 10 hours, and the $130 she'd made in tips felt like a drop of water on a forest fire. In her pocket, a crinkled final warning letter from the Oakwood Pines' care facility felt heavier than the silver tray in her hand. Tonight, her section included Table 7. The King's Table, they called it. Its occupant was Damien Thorne. Even if you didn't know his name, you felt his presence. He was the CEO and founder of Thorne Industries, a man who bought and sold companies, is the way other men bought shoes. He was dark-haired, impeccably dressed in a custom-tailored Brunei suit, and possessed a stillness that was more menacing than any angry gesture. He didn't look at Alice. He didn't even look near her. He was hosting two older Japanese gentlemen, Mr. Tanaka and Mr. Watanabe. Their translator, a nervous young man in an ill-fitting suit, sat sweating beside them. "The server is here, Mr. Thorne," the translator mumbled, adjusting his earpiece. Damien didn't look up from his phone. He waved a dismissive hand, a gesture one might use for a fly. Water still no ice, and the 98 Lafitte. "Go." Alice flinched, but her face remained a perfect, placid mask. "Right away, Mr. Thorne." She moved to the service station, her hands trembling slightly. "Go." Not please, not thank you, just a command. She poured the $4,000 a bottle of wine with a steady hand she didn't feel returned, and filled the glasses. As she did, the conversation at the table, which had been a low murmur of English, escalated. The translator was struggling, his voice pitching higher. "Mr. Thorne, sir, they are saying the Kyushu logistics hub is problematic. The typhoon, I don't pay you for a weather report, Robert." Damien snapped his voice a low razor. "I pay you to tell them to sign the damn paper. The terms are non-negotiable." The translator, Robert, relayed this. Alice, standing just out of sight, but required to stay near the table, felt a knot tighten in her stomach. His Japanese was atrocious. It wasn't just textbook bad, it was disrespectful. He was using informal verbs, a register you'd use with a college friend, not with Sea-White executives who valued protocol above all else. Mr. Tanaka, the elder of the two, inhaled sharply. He placed his chopsticks down with a quiet click. He spoke his Japanese fluid and sharp. Robert the translator went pale. "Sir, He said, "He's questioning, Your Honor. He said you are a vulture and that the deal is off." Damien Thorne's face went from cold to arctic. He started to rise from his chair. "You tell him that Thorne Industries is done. You tell him he just cost his company." "No," a small voice said. Damien Thorne froze. The entire table froze. Alice Donovan had stepped forward from the shadows. Her heart was a hummingbird in her chest, but she had moved without thinking. The words were out before she could stop them. Damien Thorne turned. For the first time, he truly looked at her. His eyes, the color of oxidized steel, were filled with a pure, murderous rage. "What did you say to me?" Alice looked past him, directly at Mr. Tanaka. She bowed, not a server's nod, but a deep, formal, perfect 45-degree bow. And then she spoke. "Tanaka-sama, I am terribly sorry." He did not understand his discourtesy. The silence that followed was absolute. Mr. Tanaka's eyes widened. Mr. Watanabe, who had been looking at his lap, sat bolt upright. Alice continued, her voice changing. The timid, severe tone was gone. It was replaced by a voice of crisp, fluent, and highly formal Keigo. He said, "You are a vulture." He did not say that. Damien stared, his mouth slightly open. The translator, Robert, looked like he was about to be sick. He said, Alice said, translating for Damien, but still looking at Mr. Tanaka, "that a vulture picks at the dead. We are not dead. We are wounded by an act of God." He did not question your honor, Mr. Thorne. He questioned your timing. He said the typhoon in Kyushu has broken the supply chain, and to sign now would be to sign a death warrant for his employees. He was asking for a 48-hour grace period, not cancelling the deal. Alice turned her full attention back to the Japanese men, her posture immaculate. "Thorne-sama is aggressive, but his vision is strong. He mistook your prudent caution for weakness. Please allow me to clarify his position." For the next 10 minutes, Alice Donovan, the 12.50 an hour waitress, stood at the head of the table and flawlessly mediated a multi-billion-dollar technology merger. She didn't just translate words, she translated nuance. She navigated the minefield of honor, obligation, and financial risk with the precision of a master diplomat. When it was over, Mr. Tanaka and Mr. Watanabe rose. They bowed deeply, not to Damien, but to Alice. Mr. Tanaka said, smiling for the first time, "Thank you, Donovan-san." Alice bowed in return. The Japanese delegation left the table, their honor intact, and the deal back on the track. Damien Thorne did not move. He just stared at Alice, the wine bottle, and the half-eaten plates. The air crackled with his silent, terrifying recalculation. He watched her stack the plates, her hands now steady. "Who?" he said, his voice dangerously soft. "Are you?" "I'm your waitress, sir," Alice replied, her mask of neutrality slipping back into place. "No," Damien said, standing. He reached into his suit and pulled out a card holder. He didn't toss a card. He placed it on the table. A single black, impossibly heavy card with embossed silver letting. "You were my waitress. You're fired." Alice's heart plummeted to the floor. Fired for saving his deal. "My office," he said, adjusting his cuffs. "Tomorrow, 8 a.m. Don't be late, Robert." He snapped at the terrified translator. "Get out! You're done!" Damien Thorne walked out of the restaurant without a backward glance, leaving Alice standing in the wreckage of his meal, holding a business card that felt like a bomb. The walk back to the service station was the longest of Alice's life. The other servers stared. Her manager, Greg, was waiting by the kitchen doors, his arms crossed over his greasy apron. Greg was a man who enjoyed the small, petty tyrannies his position afforded him. Well, Donovan," He sneered, his voice loud enough for the kitchen staff to hear, putting on a show for the big shots. What was that? Some high school Japanese. Greg, please. You broke the cardinal rule, Alice. You spoke to the guest without being spoken to. You interrupted. You think you're better than this place. He was about to lose I don't care if he was about to set the table on fire. Greg jabbed a finger at her. Your job is to carry plates and shut up. You're a liability. You're finished. Clock out. He fired me already. Alice whispered the words, tasting like ash. Mr. Thorne. Greg's face twisted into a smug grin. See, big shots don't like it when the help gets uppity. Now get your things and get out of my restaurant. Alice walked to the cramped, mildew-scented locker room. She changed out of her uniform and into her worn jeans and thin jacket. Fired. She'd saved a man's entire Pacific merger, and she was fired. The 130s in her pocket suddenly felt like Monopoly money. The bill from the care home, the final notice was $4,800. She was late. They would move her father to a state facility by the end of the week, a state facility the doctors had warned where his specialized neurological care would stop. She clutched the black business card. Thor Industries, One Global Plaza, 90th floor. It was a cruel joke. He'd fired her, then summoned her. Was it to sign an NDA? To sue her for intervening? She pictured a team of shark-like lawyers waiting to destroy her for the crime of being useful. She took the subway home, the last train of the night. Her apartment was a tiny studio in a pre-war building with rattling pipes and peeling paint. It was all she could afford. She sat on her futon, the business card on her cracked coffee table. She picked it up. Damien Thorne, CEO. The name echoed in her head. Thorne, Thorne, Thor. She walked to her desk, a flimsy particle board thing, and opened the bottom drawer. Beneath a stack of textbooks on linguistics, she pulled out a framed photograph. It was of a laughing, vital man with kind eyes, his arm around a teenage Alice. They were on a sailboat. The man was Richard Donovan, her father, the founder and brilliant CEO of Donovan Innovations, a company that had pioneered compassionate AI and ethical tech. And next to him, younger Lena, but with the same cold eyes, was his star protégé, his right-hand man, whom he'd treated like a son, a young Damien Thorne. Alice's breath hitched. It wasn't just a random billionaire. It was him, the man who had sat at their dinner table, eaten their food, and then 5 years ago orchestrated the most brutal, leveraged, hostile takeover in tech history. He'd used her father's trust against him, turned the board, and bought the company for pennies on the dollar just to liquidate it and absorb its patents. The shock of the takeover, the betrayal had caused the stroke that left Richard Donovan a prisoner in his own body. Alice sank to the floor, the card in her hand. He didn't recognize me. Years of stress, no sleep, and cheap food had changed her. She was no longer the bright-eyed on a sailboat. She was a waitress, a ghost. He hadn't just fired her. He'd summoned the daughter of the man he had destroyed, and he had no idea. The fear vanished, replaced by a slow, creeping, ice-cold rage. He wanted to see her at 8 a.m. He was about to get his wish. The lobby of One Global Plaza was designed to make a human being feel like an ant. The ceilings were 4 stories high, all white marble and glass. Men and women with sharp suits and sharper expressions clicked across the floor, their eyes locked on the stock tickers that glowed from the walls. Alice, in the only professional outfit she owned, a simple $40 black dress from a discount store, felt her invisibility cloak return. The security guard eyed her worn flats with suspicion. "I'm here to see Damien Thorne," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The guard's eyebrow shot up. Mr. Thorne doesn't see people without an appointment, and he definitely doesn't see people at 8 a.m. He gave me this, Alice said, sliding the black card under the glass. The guard's demeanor changed instantly. He didn't just scan the card. He handled it as if it were a relic. He typed something, his eyes wide. Right away, miss, my apologies. Private elevator, 90th floor. The elevator moved with silent, sickening speed. When the doors opened, it was not to a reception area, but directly into Damien Thorne's office. The room was the size of her entire apartment building floor. 3 walls were pure glass, offering a godlike view of the city waking up below. The 4th wall was a living garden. In the center was a single massive desk of dark polished wood, and behind it, Damien Thorne. He was on a call, his back to her, looking out the window. No, liquidate the Hong Kong assets. All of them, he said into a headset. I don't care what happens to their market. It's a correction. No, it's a punishment. Do it. He hung up and swiveled in his chair. He motioned to one of the 2 simple, uncomfortably modern chairs in front of his desk. You're early. Good. Alice sat. She placed her hands on her knees. Listen up, Called, he said, tapping a pen on his desk. You're fired. I told them I'd cover your severance. You fired me first, Alice said, a flicker of a smile. I did. Robert is also fired. He's on a plane back to Ohio with a non-disclosure agreement that will cost him his house if he ever tries to translate hello again. You, on the other hand, are a different matter. He steepled his fingers. You speak KGO, not just casual Japanese, but corporate diplomatic KO. You understood the Kyushu logistics problem. You knew what non-performing assets meant in context. Where did a waitress learn that this was the moment she could lie? She could invent a story, or she could lay the first card. Waseda University, Alice said clearly. Tokyo, double major in international business and linguistics. Damien's eyes narrowed. Wasa was the Harvard of Japan. An expensive education. What happened? Bad investments. Did you enjoy the nightlife a little too much? My father's company was stolen, Alice said, her voice flat. It was liquidated. Our assets were frozen, then seized, including my tuition fund. The man who did it was thorough. Damien leaned back, intrigued. He saw no fear in her, just a strange, cold calm. Stolen or outmaneuvered? Business is a battlefield, Ms. He glanced at the card. You don't have a name. Alice Donovan. The name hit the air and hung there. Donovan. Damien's face did not change. He didn't flinch. He didn't react at all. He just stared at her. The silence stretching, pulling taut. Richard Donovan, he said finally. He was a good man, sentimental. He held on to divisions that were bleeding money because he liked the people. He was a terrible CEO. He was my father, Alice said, her fingernails digging into her palms. I know. The 2 words slammed into Alice with the force of a physical blow. I know you. You knew last night. You knew who I was. Of course not, Damien said, standing up and walking to the window. I'm not omniscient. I recognized the name Donovan this morning when my security team ran your background check at 5 a.m. After I put your name into the system, I must admit I was surprised. He turned back to her. Richard Donovan's daughter, a Waseda graduate, serving me water. The irony is delicious. You destroyed him, Alice whispered, the rage now hot and thick. I won, Damien corrected her. Your father was building a house of cards. I just provided the wind. He was weak. You apparently are not. He walked back to his desk. You're desperate. Your father is at Oakwood Pines. The bill is $4,800. Past due. They're moving him on Friday. You work double shifts, and you're still drowning. You are brilliant, you are fluent, and you are trapped. You are, in short, the perfect employee." He slid a leather-bound folder across the desk. "I need you in Tokyo. The deal you saved is still fragile. I need you to close it. Not as a translator, as my new liaison. The contract is for 6 months." Alice opened the folder. Her eyes scanned the numbers and her brain stopped working. The salary was not just generous, it was absurd. It was life-changing. It was enough to move her father to the best private clinic in the country. It was enough to buy a new life. "You want me to work for you?" Alice said, her voice trembling. "You want me to help you after what you did?" "What I did," Damien said, his voice cold, "was business. This is also business. I am offering you a life raft, Alice. The alternative is watching your father waste away in a state-run hellhole while you pour coffee for men like Greg. Your pride or your father's life. The choice seems simple to me." He was right. It was a simple, brutal, and perfect trap. He wasn't offering her a job. He was offering her golden handcuffs forged from her own desperation. "If I do this," Alice said, looking up from the contract, "I have conditions." Damien actually laughed. "Conditions? You are in no position." "I am," Alice interrupted, and the fire in her voice made him pause. "You don't just need a translator. You saw what happened with Robert. You need me. You need my specific skill set. You need Waseda. You need my father's daughter. Because Mr. Tanaka, he respected my father." Damien's smile faded. She was right. "First," Alice said, sliding the contract back, "this salary, it's doubled. Second, I'm not your liaison. I'm your acting vice president of Pacific Operations. And third," she took a deep breath, "you will sign a personal guarantee for my father's care, not from the company, from you. The $4,800 will be wired to Oakwood Pines before we leave this room." Damien stared at her. The ant was roaring. He saw the same fire he'd seen in Richard Donovan, but this time it wasn't tempered by sentiment. It was forged in poverty and rage. It was the fire he understood. He picked up his desk phone. "Sarah, get legal up here. We're amending Miss Donovan's contract. Yes, she's waiting. And wire 4,800 to a facility called Oakwood Pines immediately." He hung up and leaned back, a genuine, unsettling smile of admiration on his face. "The plane leaves for Tokyo in 3 hours. Don't be late, VP Donovan." 3 hours later, Alice was on a Gulfstream G650, ascending over the Atlantic. The cabin was silent, upholstered in cream leather and smelling of expensive clean air. Damien sat opposite her, not speaking, his eyes closed in what she assumed was meditation. Alice was still wearing her $40 dress, but she now had a company credit card in her wallet and an email on her phone confirming her father's bill was paid. The relief was so profound, it was disorienting. She felt like a diver who had been pulled from a crushing depth too quickly. VP Donovan. The title felt like a costume. "They will try to break you," Damien said, not opening his eyes. Alice jumped. "What? Tanaka and Watanabe? They respected your father. They will not respect you. They will see you as a novelty, the Waitress translator. They will use your father's memory against you. They will try to leverage your sentiment to get a better deal. And what do you want me to do?" Damien's eyes snapped open. "You will leverage it back. Your father's name is your only asset right now. It's a shield, but it's also a weapon. You will use their respect for him to close this deal. My deal. Do not for 1 second forget who you work for." "I don't think I'm in any danger of that," Alice said bitterly. The flight was 16 hours. A flight attendant offered her champagne caviar and a 5-course meal. Alice, whose dinner for the past year had been instant noodles or stolen bread from the restaurant, ate every bite. She slept on a seat that converted into a full-sized bed. She woke up as they were descending into Tokyo, and for a half-second she felt a pang of her old life, the excitement, the promise. Then she saw Damien watching her, and the reality crashed back in. They were met at the airport by a black Lexus and driven to the park, Hyatt Tokyo. She was given a suite. A handler appeared with a rack of clothing, tailored suits, silk blouses, leather heels. "Mr. Thorne's compliments," the woman said. "He requests you wear the navy suit for the 400 p.m. meeting." Alice looked at herself in the mirror. The transformation was shocking. The woman staring back was not the waitress. She was not the broke, desperate daughter. She was a CEO's daughter. She was a weapon. The meeting was held in the boardroom of Tanaka's company. The air was thick with polite, unspoken tension. Mr. Tanaka and his team bowed. Alice bowed lower. Donovan's son. Mr. Tanaka said, his voice kind. "It is an honor to have you here. Your father. He was a man of great vision. I was so saddened to hear of his illness." "Tanaka-sama, you are too kind," Alice replied in flawless Japanese. "My father always said your company was the standard for integrity. It is my deepest wish to build a new partnership that honors his legacy." Damien sat at the end of the table, silent, observing. The negotiation began. Tanaka's team laid out the problem. The typhoon was a legitimate disaster. Their chip fabrication plant was offline. They couldn't meet the Q3 quota. They needed a 6-month extension and a 20% reduction in the acquisition price. It was a blatant overreach. Mr. Thorne, Damien's new English-only translator, said, "They are using the storm to renegotiate." "Tell them no," Damien said. Alice held up a hand. "Allow me," she said in English. She turned to Tanaka. "Tanaka-sama," she said in Japanese. "My father's favorite game was Go. He taught me that a storm is not an excuse to abandon the board. It is a reason to find a new path to protect one's stones." She projected a file onto the main screen. "This is Thor Industries' global supply chain. You are correct. Your Kyushu plant is offline, but our plant in Singapore is at 80% capacity, and our new acquisition in Germany is at 70%. She brought up a new slide, a complex, brilliant restructuring of the entire supply web. If we divert raw materials from Kyushu to Singapore and air freight the finished components from Germany, we can bypass the damaged hub entirely. It will cost Thor Industries 5% more in logistics for 2 quarters, but it will keep your people employed, and it will meet the original quota. We will eat the 5% cost. In return, the acquisition price remains firm. We do not ask for a discount. We ask for a partnership." The Japanese team stared at the screen. They murmured to each other. Alice hadn't just translated. She had solved the problem. She had used her Waseda education, her understanding of global business, the very things her father had taught her. Mr. Tanaka looked at the plan. He looked at Alice, and then he looked at Damien. "Thorne-san," Tanaka said, switching to slow, careful English. "This woman is not a translator. She is a visionary like her father." Damien remained perfectly still. "Is that a yes, Tanaka-sama?" Tanaka smiled. He stood and bowed. "It is a yes. Welcome to Tokyo, Donovan's son." The meeting was a success. Alice felt a dizzying rush of victory. She had done it. She had won. That night at the celebratory dinner, Damien was almost pleasant. He raised a glass to her. "To VPs who solve the problem," he said. But later, as they were leaving the restaurant, Mr. Tanaka pulled Alice aside. "A word, Donovan's son, in private." They stood on the restaurant's terrace, overlooking the glittering Tokyo skyline. "Your solution today was brilliant," Tanaka said. "But I must confess I am concerned." "Concerned? Sir?" "Damien Thorne. He does not have a good reputation. He is a shark. Your father Richard was a dolphin. He swam with sharks, but he was not one. Be careful. Thorne did not just win against your father. There were rumors of sabotage, of a planted story in the press that triggered the stock crash. A story about your father's health before his stroke. Alice went cold. What are you saying? I'm saying, Tanaka said, his eyes grave, that the shark did not just wait for blood in the water. Many believe he created it. He did not just buy your father's company. He engineered its collapse to get it for cheap. He destroyed your father's reputation to justify the takeover. Be very, very careful. A man who would do that to his mentor. Tanaka's words hung in the air. Alice had assumed it was a hostile but legal takeover. This was different. This was personal. This was evil. She suddenly saw the past 5 years in a new horrific light. Her father's sudden illness that the board used to question his stability. The anonymous tips to the financial journals. It was all Damien. She looked across the terrace. Damien was watching them, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his face an impassive mask in the shadows. He knew they were talking about him, and he didn't care. He raised his glass to her, a silent, chilling toast. The return trip to New York was a suffocating 16-hour silent treatment. The thrill of Alice's victory in Tokyo had evaporated, replaced by the chilling acid of Tanaka's warning. He engineered it. He created the blood in the water. She looked at the man sleeping peacefully across the cabin. He had orchestrated her family's ruin, buried her father alive in a broken body, and then, in an act of supreme arrogance, hired her to fix his problems. The Four's $800 he had wired to the care home no longer felt like a rescue. It felt like the first installment on a purchase. When they landed, her new life began at terminal velocity. Damien was true to his word. She was the acting VP of Pacific Operations. She had an office on the 90th floor, smaller than his, but still glass-walled, still overlooking the world. She had a salary that deposited into her bank account weekly, a number so large she couldn't comprehend it. She moved her father. The new facility was less a hospital and more a luxury hotel. He had a private room overlooking a garden, 24-hour neurological specialists and physical therapists who spoke of potential instead of limits. Alice visited him every single evening. She would sit by his bed, holding his limp hand, and tell him about her day. I renegotiated the semiconductor contract today. Dad, she'd say, smoothing his blanket. They tried to use the new tariff as leverage. I found a loophole in the trade agreement, the one you taught me about. Remember the 1988 pact? They didn't know what hit them. Her father couldn't speak. His eyes were open but distant. Sometimes she thought she saw a flicker of pride. Sometimes she knew she was just talking to herself. Her days were spent in the lion's den. She was Damien's prized possession. He would parade her into meetings with other difficult clients. This is Alice Donovan. He would say the introduction itself a power play. She solved our Tokyo problem. Alice, tell them why their German logistics are failing. And Alice would. She was brilliant. She was ruthless. She was, as Damien had noted with satisfaction, no longer sentimental. She was learning the language of sharks. She tore apart bad contracts, exposed weak links, and increased Thorne Industries' profit margin by 12% in her first quarter. But she was also gathering information. With her new VP-level security clearance, she had access to the archives. Late at night, long after the offices were dark, Alice would be at her terminal digging. She wasn't just a VP, she was a spy in her own right. She looked for the Donovan Innovations acquisition file. It was sealed, locked by the CEO's private encryption. She found another way. She searched for all press and legal communications from 5 years ago. She found the anonymous tips to the Wall Street Journal. The digital fingerprints were scrubbed, but the routing, the original server, it was a shell company. A shell company? She cross-referenced. It was owned by Thorn Industries' private holding firm. He did it. Tanaka was right. He had leaked a false story about her father having early-onset dementia, triggering a stock panic. He created the crisis, then presented himself as the only stable solution, the White Knight, who was really an arsonist. The discovery made her physically ill. She ran to the pristine executive bathroom and retched. This wasn't business. This was a character assassination. She returned to her desk, her mind clear. She wasn't just working for her father's care anymore. She was working for justice. She began to copy files, every transaction, every email, every contract that looked suspicious. She used her knowledge of linguistics to hide the data embedding encrypted files within the metadata of seemingly innocent Japanese language translation documents. She was building a case, brick by careful brick. Her success, however, was making her enemies. The old guard at Thorn Industries, the executives Damien had promoted for their pure, brutal loyalty, saw her as a threat. Particularly Marcus Cole, the COO, a silver-haired hatchet man who had been Damien's right hand for a decade. "The new VP," he said, cornering her by the coffee machine. "The little waitress. You're fast-tracking, aren't you?" But Damien gets bored of his new toys. Remember that? "I'm not a toy, Marcus," Alice said, not looking up from her tablet. "I'm the person who just saved your Asia-Pacific portfolio. You're welcome." Marcus's eyes flashed. Your father also thought he was indispensable. He found out he wasn't. Alice looked up her gaze, steady and cold. "My father's mistake was trusting the wrong people. I don't have that problem." She walked away, but she felt his eyes on her back. She knew in that moment that she wasn't just fighting Damien. She was fighting his entire machine, and Marcus Cole was its chief mechanic. She had to be faster. She had to find the final piece, the one that linked Damien personally to the smear campaign. She found her in. Damien was planning a new massive acquisition, a green energy conglomerate. It was his legacy project. He was becoming obsessed with it, and to fund it, he was leveraging every asset, including, she realized, the old dark paper shell companies he'd used to destroy her father. He was getting sloppy. He was using the same tools twice. Alice prepared her final move. She booked a meeting with Mr. Tanaka, who was flying into New York. She booked it at Leek, the very restaurant where her life had turned upside down. "A personal dinner, Tanaka-sama," she had said on the phone, "to discuss the future, to honor my father." She was ready to burn it all to the ground. The irony was so thick Alice could barely breathe. She stood in the back of Lianacle, not in a uniform, but in a dark blue Armani suit that cost more than her father's first car. Her old manager, Greg, saw her. His jaw dropped. "Miss Donovan, I didn't. A table for two. Greg." "The best one," Alice said, her voice neutral. She didn't do it to be cruel. She did it to remind herself of how far she had come. Mr. Tanaka arrived, and they were seated at a quiet, velvet-draped booth. "Donovan's son," he said, "you have changed. You have your father's eyes, but you have Thorn's armor." "I've had to," Alice said. "Tanaka-sama, I asked you here for a reason. You were right about Damien Thorn. He didn't just buy my father's company. He sabotaged it. He planted the stories. He lied." "Ali's son," Tanaka said, his face grim. "I suspected. But to prove it, I have the proof," Alice said. She slid a simple, unmarked USB drive across the table. "Everything is here." The server logs. The shell company records the money trail. It all leads back to him. It's the real story of the Donovan Innovations failure. Tanaka looked at the drive as if it were a scorpion. "What is this? Why give this to me?" "Because Alice said, Thorn Industries and your company are now partners. Your reputation is tied to his. In 2 days, Damien is announcing a new $50 billion green energy merger. This drive will stop it. It will be his ruin. The Wall Street Journal is already waiting for my call. I am giving you the courtesy of a warning. When this drops, you will need to sever ties immediately." Tanaka was pale. "This will destroy him. It will start a corporate war. The fallout." "It's justice," Alice said, her voice shaking with repressed fury. "He put my father in a bed he can never leave. He made me this. It's time to pay." Tanaka looked at her, his expression unreadable. "And this is what your father would have wanted. This scorched earth," my father saw. Alice said, her eyes flashing, "is not here to make the choice. I am. Alit son. Be careful. Vengeance is a fire that burns the hand that holds it." Before she could reply, a new voice, cold and familiar, cut through the air. "She's right, Mr. Tanaka. It's always about the choice, isn't it?" Alice whirled around. Damien Thorn was standing there. He was not angry, he was smiling, and next to him, looking triumphant, was Marcus Cole. "Marcus found your late-night server activity." "Sloppy," Damien said, sliding into the booth next to Alice. He was so close she could smell his expensive cologne. All those hidden files. It was a good try, Alice. Very clever. "But you're just an angry daughter." Alice's blood ran cold. It was a trap. "The USB drive," Damien said, plucking it from Tanaka's hand. He held it up. "Is this it, the proof?" He signaled a waiter. "A glass of champagne for my VP. She's been working so hard." "You knew," Alice whispered, her mind racing. "You knew I was digging." "I hoped you would," Damien said. "You're brilliant, Alice. But you're predictable. You have your father's one fatal flaw. You believe in justice. You believe the world is fair. I've been waiting for you to make your move. Marcus, you can wait in the car." Marcus Cole looked furious at being dismissed, but he nodded and left. It was just the three of them. "What on is this, Damien?" Alice demanded. "This, Damien said, is the final lesson. Tanaka-sama, you're a witness. I'm glad you're here. You believe I destroyed Richard Donovan." "The evidence is clear," Tanaka said stiffly. "The evidence is true," Damien said, shocking them both. "I did. I planted the stories. I triggered the stock slide. I broke him." Alice stared, horrified. "You admit it?" "Yes." "Why would I lie?" Damien leaned in. "Your father was my mentor. He was a genius, but he was weak. He was about to sell his company, our company, to a private equity firm that was going to gut it and sell it for parts. They were going to fire everyone. His legacy was going to be nothing. He was too sentimental to see they were robbing him blind. He was sick, yes, but he was also a fool. He was going to let them have it for a pittance. "So you stole it first?" Alice said, disgusted. "I saved it," Damien corrected her, his voice intense. "I engineered the crisis so I could buy it, not them. I absorbed the patents. I saved the R&D division. Your father's work. It's not dead. It's the entire basis for the new green energy merger. His compassionate AI is the brain. I didn't destroy his legacy, Alice. I'm building it. I just had to take him off the board to do it." Alice felt the room spin. You're lying." "Am I? Why did you think Tanaka's company was our target? Because they were your father's most trusted partner. The merger wasn't just about Thorn Industries. It was about rebuilding Donovan Innovations under my name, a name strong enough to protect it." He looked at Alice, his eyes boring into hers. "I brought you in. I tested you. I needed to see if you were your father's daughter, or if you were something more. If you had his brains, but my spine, and you do. You're the only one who can run it." He pushed the USB drive back to Alice. "So now you have a choice, VP Donovan. You can use that trial. You can call the Journal. You can send me to prison and destroy us both. You can have your justice. And in doing so, you will kill your father's legacy for good. The green energy merger will die, and his work will be locked in a vault of litigation forever." He stood up. "Or you can come to the 8 a.m. meeting tomorrow. You can stand by my side, and you can help me build the future your father only dreamed of. You can be the CEO of the new division. Your father's division." He adjusted his suit. "Your move." Damien Thorne walked out of the restaurant. Alice was left at the table, the USB drive in her hand. Mr. Tanaka looked at her, his face a mask of complex emotions. "A shark or a shepherd?" Tanaka murmured. "Perhaps he is both." Alice looked at the drive. Justice for the past or a future for her father's work. The man she hated had just told her the one thing that could stop her. He had made himself vulnerable. He had, in his own twisted way, trusted her. He had given her the gun. Now he was waiting to see if she would pull the trigger. The night was a suffocating shroud of silence, broken only by the quiet, rhythmic beep of a heart monitor. Alice sat in a plush armchair, a stark contrast to the molded plastic chairs of Oakwood Pines. This room at the Avalon Neurological Clinic didn't smell of bleach and despair. It smelled faintly of lavender and old, polished wood. It was the best facility money could buy. Damien's money. She was still in the dark blue Armani suit, her armor from the dinner at Lenacla. In her pocket, her fingers were wrapped around the slim, cold metal of the USB drive. It felt impossibly heavy, like a lodestone, pulling her in 2 different directions. She looked at her father. Richard Donovan was a ghost in a high thread count sheet, his face slack, his eyes open, but seeing nothing. "Hi, Dad," she whispered, her voice cracking in the quiet. She hadn't let herself break. Not in the restaurant, not in the car. Now the dam was crumbling. "He admitted it," she said, leaning forward, her voice a desperate hiss. "Damien. He admitted everything. He told me. He planted the stories. He triggered the stock slide. He broke you. He said it to my face." She waited, as she always did, for a response that would never come. But, he said. She choked on the words. He said he did it to save you, to save your work. He said a private equity firm was about to buy the company and gut it, liquidate everything. He said he was building your legacy. That this new green energy merger, it's all based on your compassionate AI. It's you, Dad. She pulled the drive from her pocket and held it up in the dim light. "I have it right here. The proof. The server logs the money trail. Everything. It's enough to send him to prison. It's enough to destroy Thorne Industries. I can have justice. It's what I've wanted for 5 years, Dad. To make him pay for this. For what he did to you. For what he did to me." A single hot tear rolled down her cheek and splashed onto the drive. "I can burn him to the ground." The silence of the room was her only answer. The steady beep of the monitor. Beep, beep, beep. But what if he's right? She whispered the question, tearing her apart. "If I do this, the merger dies. The company goes into receivership. Your work, all of it, it gets locked in a vault, buried in lawsuits and bankruptcy hearings. It dies with him. He wins. The vultures he was talking about, they'll just come and pick at the corpse." She slumped in the chair, the exhaustion of the past 5 years, the past 5 months crashing over her. "He called you weak, sentimental. He said you were a terrible CEO." She looked at his face, searching for a sign for an answer. He's a monster. But he's a monster who is about to make your greatest dream come true. What do I do? Do I choose justice for you, or do I choose a future for your work? What's right? She took his hand. It was papery thin and cold. Please, Dad, I'm so tired. I don't know what to do. Do I burn him down for what he did to you? Or do I? Do I work with him for what you created? She held his hand, her eyes squeezed shut, the tears now flowing freely. She pleaded into the void. Anything. Just anything. And then it happened. A pressure, faint, a flicker. Her eyes snapped open. She looked down at their joined hands. His fingers, which had been limp for 5 years, were squeezing. It wasn't a spasm. It wasn't a reflex. It was a deliberate, impossibly weak, but unmistakable press of his fingers against her palm. Her breath hitched. She stared at his face. His eyes, usually vacant, seemed to focus on her. For a single, lucid, terrifying second, she wasn't looking at a shell. She was looking at her father, and in that 1 second, she saw it. Not anger, not a cry for vengeance. She saw pride. The connection broke. His eyes went distant again. His hand went slack. But it was done. He had heard her. He had answered. He wasn't telling her to get revenge. He wasn't telling her to fight the old war. He was telling her to build, to be the CEO. He couldn't be, to finish the work. Alice's sobs were silent, shaking her entire body. She gently kissed his forehead. "Okay, Dad," she whispered, her voice raw. "Okay, I'll build it. I'll build it so high no one can ever tear it down." She stood up, wiping her face with a fierce, sudden gesture. She put the USB drive back in her pocket. It was no longer a bomb. It was a foundation stone. At 7:45 a.m., the backstage of the Thorn Industries amphitheater was a controlled riot of PR agents, technicians and journalists. Alice Donovan walked through it, and the chaos parted like the Red Sea. She was not in the submissive black of her old uniform, nor the blue armor of last night. She was wearing a stark, brilliant white pantsuit. It was a statement. She was not a shadow. She was not a partner. She was the light. She saw Marcus Cole by the stage entrance, his silver hair immaculate, his face a mask of smug stress. He saw her and sneered. "Well, well, the guest of honor," he said, his voice a low mockery. "Came to watch the execution from the front row. Or did you take the golden parachute? Let me guess. He gave you a new car and a corner office to keep your mouth shut." Alice paused, took a sip from a paper cup of coffee, and looked at him. She didn't look angry. She looked bored. "He gave me your oversight, Marcus," she said, her voice as cool and clear as the morning air. "The entire Green Energy Division, which means as of 9:01 a.m., you report to me. I'll expect your key logistics projections on my desk by noon, and I'll be looking for inefficiencies." Marcus Cole's face went from smug to pale to a dangerous, blotchy puce. He sputtered. You can't be serious. He wouldn't. He would," Alice said, walking past him. And he did. "Welcome to the new Thorn Industries." She took her place in the wings. She saw Mr. Tanaka in the front row. He looked old and worried. He caught her eye and she gave him a single firm nod. "It's handled." At 8:00 a.m. the lights dimmed. Damien Thorn walked onto the stage. He was a master, radiating confidence and power. And this initiative, he was saying, his voice resonating through the room, is more than profit. It is a new future. It is a legacy. But this legacy did not start with me. He paused, turning toward the wings, his eyes locking on Alice. The gamble, the final play. This legacy began with a brilliant man, a man I admired, a man I was proud to call my mentor, Richard Donovan. A murmur went through the crowd. This was not on the press release. Richard's work in compassionate AI is the foundation of this entire project. Damien continued, his voice laced with practiced sincerity. His genius was frankly overshadowed by a tragic illness and a corporate takeover that I myself led. It was a dark time, a necessary one perhaps, but dark nonetheless. I made the hard choice. I shielded his life's work. I preserved the seeds of his genius, knowing that one day they would be ready to plant. Alice had to admire the spin. It was a masterpiece of corporate revisionism. He wasn't an arsonist. He was a curator. And who better to cultivate that garden, Damien said, his voice swelling, than the one person who shares that genius in her very DNA, the one person with the brilliance to execute his vision. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the new CEO of the Donovan Green Initiative and the true heir to her father's vision, my partner, Miss Alice Donovan. The room erupted in applause. The cameras flashed a wall of blinding white light. Alice walked out onto the stage. She felt the weight of every eye, every lens. She walked directly to Damien. He had his hand out for a handshake. She took it. Her grip was not one of an employee. It was the grip of an equal. She stepped to the microphone. The room quieted. She looked out at the sea of faces, finding the Wall Street Journal reporter in the front row. "Thank you, Damien." She began, her voice ringing with a calm, absolute authority. "A mentor, a hard choice." She repeated his words. The room went utterly silent. Damien's smile froze. This was not the script. My father, Richard Donovan, was a genius, she said, her voice resonating with the power of her decision. He was also a man of integrity, trust, and compassion. These are not, as some believe, sentiments that imperil a company. They are the foundation of one. She looked directly at the Journal reporter. "Let's be very clear about the past. My father's company was not failing. It was attacked. It was destabilized by lies. It was bought in an act of brutal, calculated corporate warfare." A collective gasp sucked the air from the room. Damien was a statue of tailored wool. Alice paused just long enough for the room to hold its breath, then struck Smith. "Thorne is right about one thing," she said. "He preserved the patents. He saw genius where others, including me, saw loss. He has a rare, ruthless eye for value. For 5 years he protected what mattered while destroying who mattered." The words hit like a blade. Then she turned to the crowd. "But legacy isn't just patents, it's purpose. Starting today, the Donovan Green Initiative will unite my father's purpose with Mr. Thorne's power. We won't just be profitable, we'll be principled. I'm not here to honor the past. I'm here to reclaim it." She faced Damien. "Thank you for the introduction, partner." For a moment, silence and then thunderous applause. The crowd had witnessed both an execution and a coronation. Later in Damien's 90th floor office, the adrenaline was gone. "That wasn't the speech we discussed," he said, pouring scotch. "You wrote a script," Alice replied. "I gave it a rewrite. You walked right to the edge," he warned. "You told the Journal I attacked him." "And then I saved you," she said evenly. "I made you the shark who got tamed. Your stock will be up 10% by noon. You're welcome." He stared at her. No longer an assistant, no longer small. A queen. He smiled, defeated and impressed. "You're better than I thought." "The drive in a private vault. Switzerland. You're keeping it." "Of course," she said, sipping. "Call it our partnership contract. My reminder of what happens if you forget who I am." A long silence. Then he nodded. "I handle the board. You handle the mission." "And I," Alice said, setting down her glass, "handle you." Damien Thorne lifted his scotch. Welcome home, Miss Donovan. Alice clinked glasses. Not in peace, not in surrender, but as the start of a new reign. And that's the story of Alice Donovan. She went from being invisible to being invincible. She proved that your class doesn't determine your value, and that sometimes the secret language that saves you is your own intelligence and integrity. But the story isn't just about Alice. It's about the fact that everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. The waitress serving your coffee, the cleaner in the hall, they might just be a genius in disguise, waiting for their moment. What did you think of Alice's final choice? Was Damien a villain or a ruthless savior? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of drama twists and karma, please make sure to hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their own power, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories just like this one. Click that bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for listening.